A fourth reason why we can study intercultural communication is because the U.S. American demographics are rapidly changing. What this means is that the makeup of the U.S. today is going to look vastly different from the makeup of the U.S. when you all are in the middle of your careers, right? So when we look at this graph, we see that even today, the vast majority in terms of proportion of individuals in the U.S. are white, non-Hispanic individuals. But by 2050, so just 35 years from now, that number is going to fall to a little under half of the U.S. population, and we're going to see great increases in the Hispanic population, some smaller increases in the Asian population, but increases nonetheless, and a very, very small increase in the Black population. So this means that as you progress through your careers, you're going to have a greater understanding of intercultural communication and why it's important, because the individuals that you connect with and interact with in your organizations are likely going to be from different cultural backgrounds. So recognizing why intercultural communication is important will not only be advantageous for you as you finish up college, but it'll also be advantageous to you as you move throughout your career. One of the things I want to add is a challenge that you all stop thinking about immigration to the U.S., so these changes in demographics because of immigration, as the U.S. being this great melting pot. So we conceptualize this melting pot metaphor as something that's really positive, when in fact the melting pot metaphor kind of has negative connotations. So if you think about a melting pot, what happens is you put all the people in the pot, and they gradually melt together, and as you mix it up, everything that was unique about the individuals becomes shared. So it does change the makeup of the material in the pot, but everyone gets a little bit of it. And so in the end, everyone is very homogeneous. Everyone looks very similar. That, to me at least, isn't very representative of what we see occurring in the U.S. as people come to the U.S. So I like the tossed salad metaphor a bit better. In the tossed salad metaphor, if you're a member of the lettuce culture, you retain your lettuce cultural qualities. If you're a member of the carrot culture, you retain those qualities. If you're a member of the onion culture, you retain those qualities. And you get tossed around in the salad bowl. You get mixed up. You interact with different people. The salad dressing coats you, so you get something that's uniquely American about your experience, but you still get to retain that identity and that cultural identity that's going to differentiate you from the people around you. So when we talk about being inclusive and accepting about people, we're really adopting more of a tossed salad metaphor rather than a melting pot metaphor, because in the melting pot, we want everyone to assimilate and eventually be the same. A fifth reason to study intercultural communication is so that you can become more aware of your own culture and your own cultural identity. So this is like looking in a mirror and recognizing who you are as an individual and what your culture has enabled you to believe about the world and to value within the world. This is a really positive experience because as you come to recognize these things, you're going to compare your lived experiences and your cultural experiences to those experiences of other people and look for where those commonalities and where those differences are. This is going to not only help you understand other cultures better, but it's going to help you understand your own culture quite a bit better. The danger in this, however, is that when you compare your culture to other cultures, you might end up valuing your own culture as greater than the other culture. And when you do this, you're engaging in a process called ethnocentrism. This process is problematic, and so we do want to do everything in our power to keep this process from happening. So we want to come to intercultural interactions, accepting that other cultures are different, valuing the differences that they bring, but not necessarily assuming that the way we do something is superior. So this is a constant battle that you'll have as you'll think, well, that's really silly that someone would do something that way. And you need to remind yourself, my way of doing something isn't the best way. I need to consider other ways and consider other reasons why people might make the choices that they do. By understanding your identity, you're also going to understand which portions of your identity are privileged and which ones may or may not be disadvantaged. And we'll talk a lot about this in our identity chapter. I just wanted to briefly talk now about the fact that when we talk about whiteness and when we talk about privileged and disadvantaged identities, what I don't want you to do is feel guilty because you possess some privileged identities or feel guilty because you have white skin. So the point of these discussions isn't to increase white guilt. The point of these discussions is to get people to recognize that they do have identities that are privileged, and those privileged identities do afford them certain opportunities that other individuals might not get. So I'll again remind you of this as we get closer, but talking about white privilege, talking about privilege and disadvantage doesn't occur to make you feel bad. It occurs so that you can recognize that those systems are at work in the world around us, in our U.S. American culture. The final reason why we might choose to study intercultural communication is so that we can better confront the ethical challenges that are associated with living in a global society. So, as we come to determine what we mean by ethical challenges, it's important to understand what ethics are. So when we're talking about ethics, we're talking about the principles of conduct that help to govern the behavior of individuals and groups. So the ethics that a culture espouses are going to be the things that that culture values, or the things that that culture thinks are very important. So when we look at the ethical beliefs of a culture, we'll see that cultures believe that certain things are good and evil, and certain things are right and certain things are wrong, and we ought to do some things while we ought not do other things. And where we can get intercultural conflict is when one culture believes that something is good and another culture believes that something completely contradictory to what the first culture believed is good is also good. So my example for you here is marriage rights. So we have groups of individuals who believe in marriage equality for all people, and they believe that the only good thing that could exist in the world is enabling all individuals to get married. They have a very valid point of view. They have very logical, rational arguments to support their main ideas, right? But we also have groups of individuals, i.e. Religious individuals, who believe that marriage ought to only be between a man and a woman, and they also have very good reasons and rationales to support their beliefs. So what we find is that we sometimes engage in these moral conflicts where there's no way for us to find common ground. There's going to be no way for someone to kind of accept part of what you're saying or not accept other parts of what you're saying. So a lot of times the ethical beliefs that are connected with our cultures can cause us to engage in conflict. As we attempt to work through these conflicts, we don't want to adopt universalist perspectives. So when we adopt a universalist perspective, what we believe is that we can find a single set of rules that are going to tell us how all cultures and all places should operate. Finding that set of rules is going to be really difficult, so we don't want to look for those. Rather, we want to look for relativist principles that recognize that as we come to understand different cultures and we come to understand what those cultures value as right and wrong, we can only come to understand each culture and the knowledge within each culture by understanding the context in which it occurred. So things aren't black and white. There's a lot of shades of gray, right? There are a lot of ways in which something is right, but it's right for this culture for this reason, and that's a very valid reason, but I don't have that reason, so it's not right for me. That's what the relativists are going to believe. So they're going to be accepting of other cultures because they're going to recognize the context in which that culture came to accept that belief. So to recap, why should we study intercultural communication? Our 6 imperatives are on the screen. And to end, I want to challenge you all to think of why else you might choose to study intercultural communication. So contemplate what made you decide to add this class. What did you want to learn? Why did you think this class would benefit you in your life? And as you contemplate that, not only try and link your rationale for this class to the imperatives that we just discussed, but also think about some reasons for intercultural communication and learning about intercultural communication that aren't linked to the imperatives we discussed. And you'll see that on your discussion prompt for today, I asked you to do both those things. Talk about how that's connected to what we have discussed and to offer up a few ideas or one idea for a way in which intercultural communication was important to you that Martin and Nakayama didn't include in their textbook. So I look forward to reading your responses in your online posts. Hope you all have a great day, and I'll chat with you again tomorrow.